All right, the presentation is the courtesy of the NCES, which is the regulating body for the professional registration exams for all engineering. It's addressing the issue of professional licensing, and I'll go through I've cut out a bunch of slides because I want to embellish on some of the stuff. Some of the stuff is pretty interesting in terms of how the exam is developed and what is expected of you and why you should do this, okay? So anyway, we're going to talk about professional registration, and basically we're talking about your future, okay? You all have a future, I hope, you know, when you escape from this noble institution. And hopefully you'll take some serious steps now when it's easy to do that. All right. One of the issues that you don't want to be facing later on is I coulda, I shoulda. It's now, folks, because this is when it's the easiest to go the fastest with the least amount of effort on your part. Okay. So what we're trying to do, you know, do you know what you're going to be doing when you graduate? Yeah, most of you got jobs, all right? Most of you got some kind of a job that you're going to stick out or look for a new one. You got to start looking down the road. Where are you going to be 5 years from now? Where are you going to be 10 years from now? Okay, what do you want to do? Right now, if you're at all entrepreneurial, you're thinking about a business. Well, what kind of business do engineers get into? The easiest one is consulting. After you got some mileage on you and you got some practice in you, then you can work for companies that help other people. But you can't do it unless you got the right credentials, okay? So let's take a look at the number of jobs a college graduate will have in their career. So by 22, you're going to have 4 jobs. Some of you have had that many already because co-op changes and, you know, working for different companies and so on. But if you, by age 44, which is deep, deep, dark space for some of you guys because that's long off in the future, you're going to have about 14 different jobs. You want to be as flexible as you can. You want to have the credentials that people want when you want to change, okay? We can't predict the future. You're going to be faced with a whole bunch of different challenges. And as I have in my career, I've gotten into all kinds of crazy stuff. Okay? You know, I started out in Chicago after I got during college I worked for Ford shops and machine builders. And after college I worked for some folks in the plumbing business. I worked for Crane Plumbing, and we did failure analysis, we did casting development, we did manufacturing processes for all kinds of stuff, valves, industrial valves, and so on. I got into all kinds of things I never thought about getting into when I was in college. You know, I was going to go to the steel mill because that's where everybody was going those days. Well, I ended up die casting brass and pouring the steel castings and doing all kinds of development work on material properties for long time high temperature usage of valves that were used in the nuclear submarines. Never thought about what I was going to get into. Lots of opportunities, and we'll go into some of those a little bit later. You're going to be changing lots of different things. You got to keep building yourself up. And, you know, right now you go into a class and you say, what in the hell am I doing in this class? I don't need this stuff, you know. Wrong. You're going to put stuff in your basket. You never know when you're going to need it. You're going to have all kinds of skills in this package that you carry around with you. You'll never know when you're going to need it, but when you need it and you don't have it, that's when you got problems. So you just keep collecting stuff. You know, sort of a mental pack rat. You put this stuff in there and, you know, you may need it to pick up somebody in a bar someday. because it's a you know, a trivia question. You can answer it, and somebody says, "Oh yeah, he's recently been an engineer." You know. Okay. So anyway, things you got to know about: knowledge, skills, experience, and competency. When we talk about ethics, we're talking about people who are competent, people who are knowledgeable of their skills, and people who are experienced, and people who are willing to take the public's domain seriously. In other words, you as an engineer have skill sets that other people don't have. You are expected to behave like an engineer and help people who don't have those skill sets. Okay? That's part of what you're getting here as an engineer. You're getting a mindset, and you're getting, I don't want to call it a religion, but you're getting a responsibility issue in your head. You have skills, and you're expected to use those skills. And that's what part of being a professional engineer is. Okay? So, what are we looking for? When somebody gets to hiring you, they're looking for something, right? They're not just looking for a warm body to take up space at a desk. They want you to have some skills. They want you to have a degree, or many of them. They want some work references. They want to know, you know, for our kids here, our kids walk out with one heck of a package because of the co-op. You go anywhere else, talking to the kids who graduate from M or State or any place like that, they can't touch you guys because you got so much experience. You're a bonus. You're a big bonus. If you don't want to stay where you're at, that's okay. You can go anywhere you want. You got a skill set. Many of the engineering companies today are desperately in need of engineers who can do something. Okay? They can hire all the computer jocks they want. They want people who can think, who can work, who can do things. A prime example of this, of what happens to some of the educational systems, it's not quite educational, but about 10 months ago, a plane crashed in, I think it was San Francisco. And they said they were relying totally on the computers. And the conclusion was that the skill of the pilots, they rely on the computers to do everything. They could have saved the crash by somebody simply recognizing that they were in trouble, overriding the computer and pulling the stick back and gunning the engines and pull it out of the dive. All right? That's what our kids can do. They can think. All right? So that's why we have the technical skills that we need. We're pretty good folk here. One of the things you have to do, though, is you have to be compared to a standard. How good are you? All right? Even among your peers, how good are you? Well, what we're looking for is a universal standard. That's the same kind of standard that's used for physicians, for accountants, for lawyers. There's a standard that you're compared to. And if you pass that standard test, you're considered a minimally competent engineer. That doesn't sound real good, does it? Minimally competent. But when you see where this thing is coming from, you're going to find that there's more. This idea of minimum competency is a pretty big thing. Okay? And it's a big standout in terms of a hiring policy from somebody. Okay? We have some rules to follow, all right? For the PE license, a professional engineer, he has to have, first of all, he or she, education, experience, technical knowledge, and has taken an obligation to protect the public. The folks who gone through the Order of the Engineer ceremony here took an oath. You wear the ring on your hand because that's a symbol that you've taken the responsibility of an engineer. Okay? It's a Canadian ceremony. It was originally a Canadian ceremony. Now we've got it adapted to a lot of schools in the United States. It's a pride thing. It's showing folks, hey, I take my job seriously. Not my job, my profession seriously. Okay? You want to be standing out? Well, in Canada, you hold up your hand and people say, ah, yeah, you're an engineer. You know, you can see the ring. It also helps when you're in a bar and your glass is empty and you start tapping it on the glass. Oftentimes you see another engineer says, oh, his glass is not full. Hey, we'll take care of you. So the big thing here is the idea of public protection. In other words, we're responsible people. We have to be that way all the time. All right? So let's go through what the licensing process is. First of all, NCEES is the governing body, and they write all the exams for all the disciplines. There's differences by state. To register in some states, you have to have, for example, if you're a structural engineer, a branch of civil, in states like California, New York, Illinois, you have to take a special exam because of earthquakes. Okay, if you're an industrial engineer, it's pretty much the same exam all over. If you're a metallurgical exam taker, you take the same exam all over. All right, so there's different states have different tweaks on this thing. You can transfer your license to any state once you've passed the exam, because now you're a minimally competent engineer. All right? Yeah, it costs you money. Big deal. All right? But you can be working in New York State and get a license as a mechanical engineer in Nevada or California or Colorado by going through this NCEES organization. Okay? So the thing is, some states require a PE to even use the word engineer behind your name. South Carolina, North Carolina, if you put up advertising with the word engineer on it, you better be registered or they will come down on you hard. There are states out west, Montana, Idaho, places like that, where if you are not a licensed professional engineer, you can't teach design in the civil schools. All right? You can't teach design in the mechanical schools because they take it seriously. Okay? If you want to open up your own shop, which is what a lot of folks do consulting work, which is what I do. If you want to get on the stand, you better have a PE, because that puts you in a lot different view from the standpoint of the legal system. Okay, you're a competent engineer. You've got the credentials to go to court and defend somebody's design or defend somebody's patent or defend somebody's accident reconstruction. Okay, if you're in the civil business, bidding on public monies, you don't do it without a PE. You can't even. You got to have somebody on your job site who is a PE who is responsible, because you're responsible for the standards. Okay. All right. Well, what's it going to do? It's going to open doors. If you take the exam, there's two exams. You have demonstrated to a whole lot of people that you're better than the cut score. You're a minimally competent engineer. Two people with exactly the same credentials, you've passed the exam, somebody else hasn't. The employer now knows that you have, number one, the responsibility in taking the idea of jeopardy, and number two, you've taken an exam with 60,000 other people and you've passed it. I don't know whether this guy can pass the exam or not, but I did. All right. That puts you in a very favorable position when it comes to job hiring. Okay, you belong to a licensed profession. That means you're in jeopardy. You screw up, you can get burned. Okay, the state board can revoke your license, just like they can revoke the license of a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant. Okay, So it kind of keeps you honest. And you have to keep up to date on what's going on. You can't just get a license and then walk away and 20 years later do something. You got to be constantly keeping your skills up, right? Okay. You're part of the public's protection system, which is probably one of the keys. That's really important, okay? That one, I don't know. Sometimes, you know, you earn more money, sometimes you don't. That's not the reason why you get a PE. But you may be working more times than somebody without one. Okay? So there's 3 steps to getting a PE. Okay? First of all, I get an engineering degree. How many of you are getting an engineering degree? Okay, you got step 1 taken care of. All right? Bachelor's or master's. It has to be from an ABET accredited school. We are ABET accredited. Check the second box off. All right? There are procedures for getting, you know, people from other countries come here and want to get licensed. And a friend of mine, a Canadian friend of mine, he had to take the exams. He was almost 52 years old when he took the exams because he couldn't get a license in the United States because he didn't come from an ABET accredited school. He came from one of the top schools in Canada, but they don't recognize it. There's pretty strict, tight restrictions on who can do what, okay? That's why the licensing is important, because there are standards that you have to meet. Our kids don't have any problem with that, by the way, okay? So the second thing is you have to get some experience, and to get a PE you have to have 4 years of experience, or I think folks with PhDs don't have to have 4, they can do less. Every state's got their own little tweak on that one. But you basically need 4, if you're coming up with a bachelor's degree, you have to have 4 years of a practical experience under somebody. All right? So you have to pass 2 exams. The first one is called the FE. The best time to take it is now, because it covers mostly stuff that you're learning in the last year or so. So your review process is kind of quick. All right? Our kids have a very high level of pass, okay? Because most of the kids coming out of here got their stuff together. All right? So, take the FE exam. That's sort of a general exam, and the PE is more specific and it's more practical, okay? So, what's this one? The FE exam, all right. The fundamentals exam is changing as of January, all right? The FE will be a completely computerized exam taken at a center. They're called Pearson VUE testing centers. For those of you who might be interested, I ran some stuff off the internet. There's around here, there's 5 of those centers: Grand Rapids, Lansing, Ann Arbor, Livonia, and somewhere in Detroit. They're all over the country. So rather than having the exam scheduled, it used to be that the exam was given twice a year, October and April. You had to sign up. You go to a big football stadium, kind of an indoor football, basketball arena, take the exam with a bunch of other people. Now it's all computerized, and so you go to a computer terminal at one of these testing centers and take the exam. You sign up, and it's January, February, a month off, 2 months, month off, 2 months, month off, so you can take it more frequently. Okay. All right. So it's 4 years, four year-round cycles. It's a 6-hour appointment that you have to make. It's actually a 5-hour exam with 110 multiple choice questions in variety of disciplines. Okay. If you are a chemical, civil, electrical, computer, environmental, industrial, mechanical, those are specific to your discipline. If you're an other, it's a more general test. All right? Take whichever one you want. Okay, depending on your particular discipline level. When should you take it? Now. Okay. Don't be lazy. It's a computer test, so you have obviously you sit in front of a tube for five or 6 hours. Just think of playing some kind of game for 5 or 6 hours. Okay, called engineering. Okay. The exam is created by committees of people who are in the field. We have several folks in our organization who work on the FE exam. They go to various locations and they write questions. You get a book when you're preparing to take the exam. I have the exam guide for anybody who's interested to take a look at it. This is an old version of the book that you get, and basically it covers all the formulas. You don't have to memorize formulas. This is your reference book. This is the only reference book you get for this exam. All right? But everybody gets the same book, so everybody's on the same page. Typically, calculators are somewhat restricted. Some places will give you a calculator because they don't want you to bring in your mini computer with all the stuff in there. All right, so they'll give you something. And every state is a little bit different. The exam is scored. It's the same thing like you take the entrance exams for college. It's the same kind of scoring systems. Okay, SAT scores and stuff. Okay, here's some ideas of pass rates by discipline and how many pass it on the repeat. So you can see some of the exams are a little tougher than others. In the first shot, not, you know, there's some that are 64% and some that are 80%. Okay, our kids are pretty much in the 90%. Okay. Here's by exam. These are, by the way, these are the disciplines that are available for the PE. Okay, so I've been working on this exam for about 20 years. All right, so it's a materials exam, and you can see these are the FE scores for the various major disciplines in the system. But you can get a PE license in any one of those. Okay. Okay. So let's look at the PE exam. Okay, first of all, it's a practical exam. It's developed by people like me, weird ones. Okay, I write crazy questions. You got a bunch of academics, you got a bunch of industrial people, you got a bunch of consulting people. You write questions on the topics, and there's very, very strict guidelines about writing questions. They're all multiple choice in the PE. Okay, but the questions are supposed to test to a formula. Okay, the formula that is, or I should say, a specification. About 2 months ago, I was in Montreal at the national meeting of the Metallurgical Society, and we went through and did what's called a PAC study. PAC studies are interviews. I've run 2 PAC studies, and this one I didn't want to run anymore. I got tired of the game. But basically what you do is you survey as many people as you can in the business who are licensed engineers. When I did the first one I did, we got 250. The next one I got was like almost 400. This one they got somewhere in the 300 range. So they survey these people in terms of what does this, if you are a practicing professional engineer, what should you know? Okay, thermo, chemistry, heat transfer, phase diagrams, everything. So you get this whole laundry list, and these people fill out these surveys, and then they crunch the survey, and they come back in and they say, okay, here's the distribution, and here's what the majority of the people say you should need to have in here. Okay, so you sit down and you spend all day going through the statistics of determining the most probable questions for the exam. And you got maybe 15, 20 people in the room, all guys and gals who have been around the block a few times. And you try to develop this standard for giving this test. Then you spend another half a day fighting over what percentage of each of these topics should be represented. In other words, phase diagrams, for those of you who had my class, you remember what phase diagrams, right? Okay. So phase diagrams, how many questions on this exam should be out of phase diagrams? Okay, and so you get a percentage, and so you publish that, because you have to publish that to the audience, that these are the topics that you're going to be covering, and these are the number of questions in this topic area. And then you go out and you start writing questions. Okay? So it's very specific kind of questions, but we tell you what we're asking you, we're going to ask you. And what my job when I leave here for a while will be to write a program for review of that exam. The people think I know enough to not screw it up. So, okay, it's an open book. You can bring anything you want, just about. You got to be careful. You can't. They will restrict certain things. Okay. So you get this exam. You take the exam. Again, it's a multiple choice exam, and when you get all through, you get a pass-fail. Well, what's pass-fail? Okay, first of all, the exam for the PE is taken 2 times a year, April, October. The same exam is given to everybody in that discipline from Guam to Puerto Rico. So you might have 40,000 people taking the exam in a day. All right. Then out of those 40,000, there's a cut score. And the cut score is the minimum number of right answers you have to pass the exam. Well, how's that determined? A group of people who are professionals get together and take the exam prior to, let's say, when we were in Montreal, there was a group of 16 guys and gals who took the exam. The exam is scored, and then there's a cut score determined from that exam based on statistics and all kinds of weird stuff that I don't understand. It's basically a very sophisticated analysis tool. Then the exam is given, or those questions now are the basis for the scoring of that exam for the next 5 years. All right. So now what happens? Exam is given this year. 15 questions are taken from this exam that are highly discriminating between the people who passed the exam and the people who didn't pass the exam. All right. So they're statistically proven to be the ones that determine are the line between the guys and gals who know what they're doing and the guys and gals who don't. Okay, so there's a very heavy-duty analysis program that comes in and says this question discriminated the best of the people who were in this set to this time. Those 15 questions are moved to exactly the same location in the next test. And they are used to grade the tests to correlate from one test to the next. The next year, the new 15 questions are taken and they're moved to the next test. So now we have a correlation from the third test back to the first test. So now you got 120,000 people taking this exam, and if you pass it, an employer knows, wow, this person's got some smarts. He can handle this kind of exam, okay? So, it's a tough exam, okay? Because you're putting people's lives at risk. And they want to make sure that you know what you're talking about. You gotta have focus. You can't just, cram the night before and walk in. You gotta have your stuff together pretty well, okay? There's a lot of help, okay? Your next step, take the PE exam starting with the FE, okay? The group that you want to look at is called NCEES. You go to their website, and you got all kinds of stuff, and there's links to every state. Oh well. There's links to every state and what their specific requirements are. The FE exam right now costs $2.25 to take, and I think you can take it as many times as you want. The PE, I think you can only take that 4 times now. All right, but National Council of Engineering, National Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying, and this is their symbol. So if you want to take a picture of it, you can pick it up on your website. Got time for questions?
Thank you very much. For you, so thank you very much.
Oh, cool.
And it's nice as the gift that you reception.
Well, your gift was really cool.
So if anyone has questions,
That's neat. Thank you. Or anything else, I've been around here for about 105 years. Yeah, sure.
4 years, you have to be working for 4 years before you get the 2 years that we've been working for. That does not count.
In some states it does, because it's practical experience. Okay, but you have to be working for a PE, and if for the 2 years that you're working, you're not an engineer yet. So that some states won't take it. Okay. But if you have a PhD, that cuts your time down in some states by a year or 2.
If you have to work under a PE, I guess, can you be more specific about it? Like, you have to assist the person?
In other words, you have to have somebody that can attest to your skill level. Because when you apply for the exam, you have to get letters of reference from people who can honestly say they know that you're skillful. Okay, character references.
Keep in contact with your boss.
Yeah, keep in contact with your boss, but you can get all kinds of references for people. In plants, it's a little hard because people don't. Industrial concerns have so many people working there, somebody in the organization, and they get industrial exemptions, so to speak. Most of the time, if you get good, solid references, and we know you. I mean, Dick and I have written I don't know how many reference letters for PE. Some of your old professors know what you are. Okay, the FE isn't as stringent, but the PE is. You have to. It's a lot of paperwork, but it's worth it.
Of course, I took the FE back in '83.
See again?
I took the FE back in 1983, which is years ago. At that time, I had to take a nuclear engineering. I had a whole bunch of topics. Has that just changed? Because if I took the FE now as the EE, do I have to take?
You take the E. You take the E.
Dynamics, mechanics?
Yeah, the FE is going to have that kind of stuff, but it's more oriented towards an electrical engineer. All right. But you have a PhD, correct?
Well, I'm ready PE.
Yeah, but I mean, if you are a PhD, you don't have to take that exam in Michigan. You're cool. Okay. You check that box. I'm done.
Well, one of the huge advantages to the institute, listen, you can see how long I've been around, to the university of having our students on a regular basis take that exam is it gives the faculty, it gives everybody else feedback on how well we're doing on teaching the fundamentals. I see the day when that may be a graduation requirement.
Well, we were trying to use that, the PAC study is a survey of what everybody calls industrial engineering or everybody calls metallurgical engineering. And that's a great assessment tool from the standpoint of what should we be teaching? Because we're teaching our kids to go get a job, and in order for our kids to get picked up as an employee, they got to have certain skills. So if we're not giving them the skills to get the job, what the hell are we doing?
You preach to the choir.
I don't know how far you go back here at this school, but you've been here around for quite a while.
Yeah.
We used to offer the FE exam free of cost to all our students here.
No, we used to offer the
Well-
FE refresher course.
The refresher, yeah, to say that. The refresher course, that was very helpful for many students.
Yeah.
That was funded by the provost office at the time.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to,
Well, we could
because-
talk to him. We could talk to him because we could talk to him again.
Yeah,
I mean, we used to give a refresher course. It was primarily mechanical engineering because that was the biggest number of takers. And we'd get people from, former students who wanted to get licensed. They'd come in from
Yeah, we had
the GM plants all over the place, and we'd have, half a dozen guys working, and then maybe 15, 18 students, and we'd run every night for 6 weeks. Anyone could take it, but it was heavily ME'd.
because by the number, yeah. But something that you might want to,
Yeah, we might want to talk to the
yeah.
boss about that one. Any other questions? Yeah.
You said that the questions were decided on beforehand, but is like the number of questions per topic released to the people that are going to take the exam?
Yeah, there's a specification that's what we write. That's what this PAC study does. It's a specification, and that specification is the culmination of this survey. And we tell you there's going to be so many percent of this, so many percent of this, so many percent of this. And if you look at there's 110 questions, you can figure, okay, there's 10%, so there's 11 questions on this topic, or so a topic area. They're not specifically, this is a heat transfer. Well, it might be heat transfer, fluid flow, something else, all combined, but it's the general topic of that.
Can you get a PE in more than one discipline? Like, say you got your bachelor's in mechanical and your master's in like naval architecture or something like that. Could you get a PE in both mechanical and?
If you want to spend the time and money, go for it. It's a little bit like having a wisdom tooth taken out. You do it once and you're done.
His licenses are free, it costs you, New York is up over $200 a year.
Yeah.
Michigan's what, $80?
80 every two. Ohio is
24 for two.
24 for two. No, 24 for one.
Michigan, I think, what you said, 80 every 2 years.
Yeah.
Florida is very expensive, so go for it.
Yeah.
Need the money.
So.
I don't think actually PE in Michigan actually says PE, electrical, it says PE.
It's PE. You have a PE. But part of the ethics of being a PE is you don't work outside your discipline, because that's where you get yourself into trouble. In other words, you get a civil engineer doing electrical work, he can get burned.
An electrical engineer doing civil probably would work. You know that.
There's no such thing as a civil engineer. You know that.
Right, some states do read PE, mechanical PE.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for staying awake.